Everybody, I want to start out by thanking you for the work that you do. There is no greater work that's happening in our country today. No greater work at all. And so I just want to tell you thank you. I might get a little weepy up here because it's the whole early childhood movement hit me like a train a few years ago. And now I worship at your altar, understanding the relevance of our ability or inability to make America what the Constitution, the preamble, which I love, says we're supposed to be. Frantz Fanon, an African philosopher, said that every generation out of relative obscurity must discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. Must discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. And I declare to you today that making sure that every one of America's babies has a strong foundation is our mission today. And so, yeah. Chris mentioned that. Are you familiar with the Harlem Children's Zone, by the way, everybody? Cradle to college pipeline happening in the center. So the Northside Achievement Zone is modeled after that. In fact, there are hundreds of communities around the country that are modeled after the Harlem Children's Zone right now. And I want to give you a little background just to tell you. I'm going to start with my organization, but then I'm going to work up to today. So about 3.5 years ago, community members in North Minneapolis heard about the Harlem Children's Zone, a place-based strategy in central Harlem, starting at the cradle at womb with wrapping around its children, particularly its African-American children, and saying that no child will fail on our watch. And so it was a place-based strategy to end poverty, and we got excited about it. The question was called, could you do that here? And we were 50 organizations, schools, nonprofits. Mine was a violence prevention organization at the time that had just started moving into looking at education reform, but I was really focused on the K through 12 system. I mean, preschool and 0 to 3 didn't even exist for me, right? It was all around the reform that happened in preschool. And so we came together and the question got called and we said, well, the outcomes that we're seeing for our children today are not doing it for us. We are all getting millions of dollars. At that time, I had a $450,000 budget. And the outcomes for low-income children of color in our zone are going backwards. And I got to tell you, I'm from North Minneapolis. I live in North Minneapolis. I've been there 15 years. And North Minneapolis is really the tale of two cities, but it's also the tale of America. Because what's happening there is happening in every major inner city in our country. And when I say it's a tale of two cities, I mean, you have blocks in North. How many of you are from North Minneapolis? Anybody else? Right? Hey, North Minneapolis in the house. And it's a tale of two cities. You'll be on one block, and there's manicured lawns, and the bushes, the hedges are in the shape of deer, and you're looking out on, straight up, and you're looking out on Theodore Wirth Park. But then, right, and everybody's doing well, and all the children are above average, and the men are good looking, And then you go up towards my house, right, and around the corner from me, and you start clutching your purse a little tighter, and like saying, I don't know if it's cool for my kids to go to that local park. A very different, in the same city, in the same neighborhood. And what we know is that children who live in my zip code, 55411, simply by being born there, statistically will not graduate high school, definitely aren't going to college, and may just make it in terms of not going to jail. And so we started 3.5 years ago. The organizations came together. We said our children have gotten poorer on our watch. More are being adjudicated in the juvenile justice system. More are not ready for kindergarten. The achievement gap is getting bigger. The graduation gap is getting bigger. The mobility gap. So we just said, let's come together, not working individually. So we started the Northside Achievement Zone, and I'm going to tell you all about it in just a moment. And we said we wanted to do it womb to work, cradle to college, and really bust up that cradle to prison pipeline that runs straight through the heart of my community. And but we realized we couldn't do it. You can't lead a collaborative collaboratively. So we became the backbone organization, and we were the Peace Foundation. And so but doing the work really quick. We were doing the work, and then in 2010 we applied applied for President Obama's Promised Neighborhood Grant. And it was a planning grant. 21 neighborhoods were invited to apply. Well, 21 neighborhoods took the challenge of applying. You know, anybody apply for a federal grant before? Shoot me, right? So I have gray hair because of that, and I drink more red wine. Yes, I do. But anyway, so we decided to apply $750,000 grant, and we thought we had it. And we looked at each other as a community, and we were doing this work that I'm going to tell you about in about 15 minutes. And so we were doing the work, and we were so excited because the federal government sent us a note right before the announcement was going to be made. I kid you not. I got something in my inbox saying that they needed our bank routing number. So what, I mean, I can rub two coins together. That meant we got the grant, right? So I'm like so excited, you know, not telling everybody, keeping it on a down low, but really just really excited. And then the news comes out. The superintendent of Minneapolis called me like, Sondra, the superintendent of St. Paul said that they got the Promised Neighborhood Grant. Did we? And I'm like, okay, they're not giving the Promised Neighborhood Grant to two cities. So I knew we didn't get it. The reporter who was supposed to come visit us went to St. Paul instead. And but anyway, so it was a pretty sad time for us, but it was a great time because all of these community leaders across schools, early childhood, you know, nonviolence, health, we had to look at each other and say, did we make a promise to the children or not, right? And does the money, yes, we need money to get the work done, but is that going to be a mitigating factor to us doing this cradle to college pipeline, womb to work pipeline? And we looked at each other, and instead of our partners moving away from us, we actually moved into each other more because we were beleaguered and losers. So, and God, I think, even stronger. So last year, in 2011, another grant came out and said, all right, so now we're going to move to implementation. And we're going to award 5 implementation grants across the country and about 15 more planning grants. So, I mean, major funders even said to us, you know, you'd be kind of stupid to apply because clearly 21 of the neighborhoods that got $750,000 last year, at least 5 of them have to be moving to implementation this year. And so the odds were stacked against us. But again, we had already made a promise to the children of our community. And so with the wing and a prayer we applied, and lo and behold, and I got to tell you, I had a dream before the announcement at the end of the year that we did not get the grant. I had a dream that somebody from the feds said you didn't get it. And so then when it was announced that we were one of 5 neighborhoods in the country, and the only one out of the 5 that had not gotten a planning grant the year before, when we heard that we had been awarded $28 million to do the work in North Minneapolis over a 5-year period to create a cradle to college pipeline, or to continue that, we were dumbfounded. And it was, and so we are a promised neighborhood. And I tell you, the humbling thing for me, and I'm glad I thought we weren't going to get it, because what I realized is that it's not about us. It's not about the adults in the community. The reason we got that grant is because it's simply time. The babies of our communities who have been left so far behind in America's little nastiness, it's just time for them to get some support. It's time for the adults to get it together. It's time. It's time for them to have a strong foundation and a fair start. And so we were just, you know, working with Fidelity, and so God blessed. And so excited about the work, and we are moving forward, and I am so convinced that we are going to expand our borders over the 5-year period, not retract. But I tell you, the work is incredible, and I know you know it. And I want to tell you a little bit about how I came to the whole understanding of the importance of 0 to 3. Before we became NAS and we talked about creating this cradle to college pipeline, I had spent the last 7 years trying to get rid of the cradle to prison pipeline, right? And so we were doing all kind of nonviolence work in the community, going to the most dangerous nodes, having community building events, and we always had vigils for the young people who were being killed, and, you know, looking at the young people who were doing the killing, because so it's a double whammy. tsunami on a community, right? And so anyway, but every time we did a vigil, I always felt like I was downstream. Like it's not just the cradle to prison pipeline, but it's the cradle to the grave pipeline. And so doing the vigils, oh gosh, what do we do? What do we do? So that's when I got into the K through 12. Well, because I started seeing this connection between the educational outcomes of the young, predominantly African American men that we were burying. Like all were either high school dropouts or about to be, or in an alternative school, or and with aspirations of either doing rap or playing basketball and so on. And for some, when I would ask the parents what their dreams were, they didn't even know what they were. So I kept, so education, yes, community, fracture, family dysfunction, yep, that happened in many of the instances. But I kept seeing this connection to education, education, education. So we started bringing in schools from around the country that were just turning the tide in terms of educating kids just like ours. And in fact, we all go to the movies and we see stories about it. So how many of you have seen Freedom Riders? Right? You go like, yeah. So a teacher, a mercurial teacher that goes in and she changes a classroom. These unteachable kids that they call unteachable, who are gangbangers and should be on the way to prison, are starting to do calculus and graduating at untold levels. And we, instead of replicating those kind of teachers and systems, we just revere them, we cry in the movies, and then we go home, right? And so, but we were seeing places like Harlem Children's Zones, Promise Academy, Urban Prep Academy in Chicago, where 100% of the African American males graduate and have going on to four-year colleges. And we said, well, if it can be done around the country, and I could go on about the examples, then it could be done here. And so we started focusing on the K through 12. And in fact, and again, breaking up this cradle to prison pipeline. And I was so interested in it that I don't know if any of you have read the book or heard about the book by Michelle Alexander. And it's called The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. Mass incarceration. And so, this cradle to prison is real, right? And it is like a new Jim Crow we have a racial caste system in this country, across race and across economic lines. I just want to give you a little quote by Michelle. What has changed since the collapse of Jim Crow has less to do with the basic structure of our society than with the language we use to justify severe inequality. In the era of colorblindness, it is no longer socially permissible to use race explicitly as justification for discrimination, exclusion, or social contempt. Rather, we use our criminal justice system to associate criminality with people of color and then engage in the prejudiced practices we supposedly left behind. Today, it is legal to discriminate against ex-offenders in ways it was once legal to discriminate against African Americans. Once labeled a felon, depending on the state you're in, the old forms of discrimination, employment discrimination, housing discrimination, denial of the right to vote, of course that's here in Minnesota, the exclusion from jury service, are suddenly legal. And people who have records, find it very hard to get jobs, find it very hard to get housing, and many of them are from my community, right? And then they come back and they continue to do their jail sentence. And anyway, and so as criminals, you have scarcely more rights and arguably less respect than a black man living in Alabama at the height of Jim Crow. And we have not ended racial caste in America, we have merely redesigned it. And then she goes on, and from doing the work, right? And when I started working with early learning practitioners and the whole continuum of education, I started realizing that Michelle was really downstream, right? Talking about the new Jim Crow being mass incarceration in the age of colorblindness. I would say that really the new Jim Crow is mass under-education, starting in the womb and beyond in the age of colorblindness, and that this is in fact the cradle to prison pipeline or the womb to workhouse pipeline. And so looking now at the connection between early childhood, kindergarten readiness, and then reading by 3rd grade, and then high school graduation, and you all know all the stats, right? I mean, do I have to read them that 41% of inmates in the nation's state and federal prisons and local jails in 97, that only 41% of them did not have a high school diploma. 31% of them on probation did not either. And in the general population, it's just 18%. So there is a direct correlation between incarceration and what's happening in our schools, and it starts at the very beginning. I am part of the African American Leadership Forum that Chris mentioned, and we talk about 5 gaps that create the achievement gap. The first being the preparation gap, that kids are not starting school ready to learn. The teaching gap, that in the urban core, low income areas that we don't have the best teachers in front of our students. The leadership gap, that it all starts at the top, right? And then the time gap. Jeffrey Canada talks about this all the time. If kids are starting school behind, they're not catching up, they need more time on task. And then the belief gap, that is also, and in fact, I think between the preparation gap and the belief gap, we got a huge problem in this country. One of the things that we do in the Northside Achievement Zone in coordination with the University of Minnesota, as well as the Minneapolis Public Schools and Youth Coordinating Board, we have something called Family Academy. And it is a 15-week parenting education program. You heard of Jeffrey Canada's Baby College? It is akin to that. And the parents learn all about brain development, positive discipline, the importance of, in fact, we were on the news last night. I don't know, anybody catch that, Channel 11? Okay, they were talking, okay, great. And one of our parents was featured. But they learn all about this, and it's all in the spirit of getting the child ready for kindergarten. And I'm gonna jump to my PowerPoint, right? Did you want to, oh, okay. So it's all in the spirit of getting children ready for kindergarten, and this mission, that the mission of NAS is to build a culture of achievement in a geographic zone in North Minneapolis to ensure that all youth graduate from high school college ready. And that's our zone right there. And the parents do Baby Academy, and they learn all about that, and everything that we do in Family Academy for 0 to 3-year-old parents with children 0 to 3 is all around increasing their belief that their child, in fact, a mother said at one of the graduations, I'm finally believe that my children are worthy of college. And 75% of the families that come through our Family Academy make $10,000 or less. But when the parents graduate, so we're hitting the preparation gap, right? Because they're learning this is what it takes when your baby is 0 to 3, and boy, I get excited when I meet a pregnant mom and dad. But anyway, that this is what it takes to put them on a college trajectory. So mom graduates, and she gets this t-shirt, and you're not going to be able to see it good, but it says on the back, my kids will graduate from college, right? And for the mothers and fathers, and we have few fathers, but the fathers are coming through, and they have sagging pants, but they come and they're doing Ring Around the Rosie with their kids. I mean, we love it. We're like, sag those pants, just show up. And then the babies, the parents get that, and then the babies get these t-shirts that say college graduate, right? And then on the back, we put the year that they're gonna graduate college. I know everybody always says, oh, this t-shirt travels, y'all. It's been to New York, it's been all around the country. But anyway, 2034 is when our youngest baby will graduate from college, 2034. And what we're making a guarantee as a community across 50 organizations and schools is that the children will not fail on our watch. That we, in fact, and because the parents that graduate from Family Academy, they are believers, that they have the support that they need so that their children will be ready for kindergarten, that they will be at grade level by 3rd grade, they will take rigorous math courses by 8th, and that they will graduate high school college ready. And what we ask these families to do, who live right there in that zone, and it is the most imperiled zone, by the way. The reason we picked that is because of the outcomes for children in that area of North North Minneapolis, because like I said, North Minneapolis is the tale of two neighborhoods, that we ask them, now that you believe that your baby can be kindergarten ready and therefore graduate from college in 2034 and we'll be with you even if we have a cane and we're in a wheelchair, now that you believe, our job as a community is to hold that belief for your neighbors who don't. And I submit to you in this room, I know that you all are believers, right? But I think you know a few folks who are not, who really don't get that strong foundations are the critical difference, and what a critical difference it makes. Don't judge them. You hold the belief, you do the work, you show the outcomes, and that's how we're going to make this thing go to scale throughout this country. A little bit more about the zone. So these are our benchmarks. We have over the 5 years, what we're trying to do right now, only 29% of our children in the zone are ready for kindergarten. Within the next 5 years, our goal is 80. And for me, that's a minimum goal. It's a minimum goal. And then we want to increase the children who are at grade level in reading from 27% to 75, and then math, 24 to 70 by third grade. And then improving the graduation rate from 54% to 80% in the zone. And that is not disaggregated by race, because if you disaggregate it by race, that 54% goes even lower. So a few years ago in Minneapolis, African American students had a 33% four-year graduation rate. You don't build a community on that. And I would submit you don't build a country on that. So here's our secret sauce. To do what we're doing in the zone, we really have 3 pillars of impact that we go after. One is, and by the way, the PowerPoint is in your packets, everybody. I don't know if you, all right, you're up on me, because you knew about the importance of early childhood years before I did, so. But anyway, so 3 pillars of impact. First thing is that we're working with parents to drive a culture of achievement in the home. So we know that parents are the first teachers, and we also know that the parents that I'm working with are not just lazy people who don't care about their children's education and just want to do drugs and get high and sleep around. Not the case. Not the case. We have 166 families that are part of the Northside Achievement Zone. And what our family coaches, because we have a very high-touch process. The way we drive achievement is that we have neighbor coaches called NAS connectors, full-time workers, and all they do is partner with families along the whole continuum of the work that we're doing collaboratively to create this pipeline to college. And what they've asked the families over the last couple of years is, do you want your child to go to college? And I don't care what the parents look like. They all said absolutely. And then, could you use a little support to make that happen? They all said yes. And in fact, we had a focus group of about 9 parents. They were all moms, so single mothers predominate in the zone. And we asked them, why are you a Northside Achievement Zone family? And we asked them where they were from. Only one of the 9 was actually from Minneapolis. The rest were largely from the south side of Chicago, from Gary. And the story that they told gave me a real deep appreciation. They all kind of said uniformly that they moved here just like every single American that's immigrated to the country. We don't equate moving from the south side to Minneapolis as immigration, but you know what? It is, right? And they said, well, one mother said, I didn't want my second grader to continue to be recruited into a gang. So I chose to stay in a homeless shelter in Minneapolis than to stay in Chicago and deal with that. Now, we know Chicago's not all like that. So how many of you from Chicago saying, don't stereotype my city? Because I get that, because we do that in North Minneapolis as well. Don't stereotype the North Minneapolis. We know it's not the whole place, right? But it is some people's experience. And so she said, I didn't want to be in a gang. Everybody kind of agreed. The schools were failing on the south side, wanted to escape that, and for economic opportunity, and for support. They all said the same thing. But what happened is they had this American dream, and they moved here, and they moved on a block that with a bunch of neighbors who had moved here for the very same reason, and there is no Lutheran social services for people moving from the South Side, or Catholic charities, and no intact group like voluntary immigrants. You know, that's what we call, voluntary minorities to this country, right? Not that same connection together. And so they come and they find themselves isolated. They find themselves with no social support system. They find themselves with struggling schools disproportionately, which are located there. And so what we offer them is simply what they came here for. And even the parents who are from here, how many of you know that we all need a little support as parents? Like, right? When you're middle class and upper class, we can have this illusion that we've made it on our own. Crap. No, we haven't. And the thing is, a poor mother knows that. A poor father knows that. And so they're not asking for a handout. They're asking for a partner and some support. And so our family coaches are not social service agents, right? We do work with social service agencies, but they are just like straight up, you work your achievement plan, we're gonna work the achievement plan with you. And so that's the first thing. They create achievement plans in a web-based tool that we call NAS Connect, and it is our vital village. So I talked to you about all of our partners. We can talk around the family's achievement plan, and it's really simple. They do plans around education, social, emotional, career, financial pathways, housing. How many of you know housing is a big deal with the high mobility? In fact, you know, we just celebrated the year of the resiliency from the May 22nd tornado that tore through the community. Well, you know, that wasn't the first tornado that tore through North Minneapolis. We've had several metaphoric tornadoes: foreclosure crisis, isolation, neglect, you know, and the families know that. So anyway, so that they're doing the achievement plan, and all of the partners that are partnered with us can see their plans if the parents give them permission, and help them move on to the next phase in the terms of what they're working with. And then secondly, impacting schools and academic programs to create highly effective education pipeline. So again, we have about 12 to 15 four-star rated early learning providers in our network who all meet regularly, and they focus on prioritizing the 166 families. And by the way, you know Minnesota won that Race to the Top award. Well, I know you probably heard too that they designated Northside Achievement Zone as one of the communities where we would benefit from the early childhood scholarships. So anyway, so we're doing it from there. We're working with 9 anchor schools: public charter, public district, parochial, contract alternative. We're working with all the mentoring organizations, the 3 biggest, to make sure every child in the zone has a mentor. And then quality out of school times. We're spending a lot of money on academically based quality out of school time. Because, you know, I think education is real simple, especially for kids in my community. Great teaching and more of it. And so we're expanding that in our pipeline, and we have an out of school time pipeline. And then certainly the college access. The University of Minnesota and MCTC, we're building the bike as we ride it, by the way. If you ask me, Sondra, have you done this? Have you done that? We may have, but we may not have, because we're still, you know, kind of riding and doing it. And so anyway, they're starting our college access action team. And then lastly, our whole family support services, and that's our career and financial pathways, our housing, and our behavioral and mental health. And what we're making sure is that, we've had some success, so a lot of success. Last year, about 40 families in their achievement plan said, I will be highly mobile if I don't get some support. And we were able to find housing for 30 families. And we're ramping it up. Minneapolis Public Housing has agreed that families on the waiting list and by the way, you know, they have like 6,000 people on their waiting list, and they open it just every few years, that if a NAS family is already on the waiting list, they will go to the top. And that's the thing, by the way, that's the 2 secrets. 1, high touch, so the NAS connector, who's the family coach, doesn't leave the family. They're staying with them the whole way through. And then the other thing is that the organizations make a commitment to prioritize the family and children, because that's the experiment that we're doing, because it hasn't worked yet, right? I believe it will. I absolutely believe it will. But the only way we can do it is if we change everything about the child's life at once, starting in the womb. So I mentioned the family coaches already, instilling belief, creating the achievement plans. Talked about the education pipeline, family support. And this is really our, I'm going to back up. That's really our continuum, our womb to work. It's a little dizzying, I apologize. I'm going to do some different marketing things with my PowerPoint. But as you can see up top is the womb to college, and then you see the education pipeline, and then at the bottom, the whole family support. And the goals that I articulated earlier for moving from 29% kindergarten readiness to 80, that's what's up top. And the frequent progress monitoring is really key. We don't have to wait for the baby who's graduating college in 2034. He'll be going to kindergarten in 5 years, right? And so we don't have to wait for 5 years to know if he's kindergarten ready. So the University of Minnesota at UROC through SEED is working with us on progress monitoring so that we have checkpoints all along the way to make sure they are ready. And I don't know if any of you know Dr. Scott McConnell, but under Scott, we are doing things like using a process called LENA. Anybody ever heard of LENA? Where you track the number of words a baby hears. And so our families have agreed that the babies will wear the little bibs that have the boxes, and it'll record the number of words that they hear. Isn't that exciting? You know, I mean, we got a lot of things to work out, but a lot of ways that we can measure. And believe me, we are driven by data. We are driven by data. The NAS Connect that I mentioned to you, that system that connects all of the partners, it's also our reporting tool. And we can see at any moment how many families said they needed housing, how many families we are having the process of housing, how many families received housing, for mentoring, how many families filled out applications, how many families are in the process, with which agency, because everybody's reporting, and that's something that we're building up with the grant, that everybody will use NAS Connect as a central reporting vehicle as well. So again, one effective system, that's really what we're doing, creating one effective system across multiple organizations and schools focused on the same family and the same children. Am I going backwards? Okay, one system is established. So yeah, so So lastly, this is our scale-up model, and this is really where right now, again, you can see over here on the right-hand side, we are now at about 166 families, about 450 children, and our goal is to be at 1,200 families, 3,000 children by the end of 2014 and on out. In the zone itself, we have 2,200 families and about 5,000 children. And what we're looking at is starting early, creating that strong foundation. Because by the way, once they go through Family Academy and they're doing the LENA, and by the way, we can already, parents are saying that they understand now how important it is in terms of the number of words that they speak to their babies, right? So we have a father who couldn't read, and so we had our Incredible Years curriculum that the university is using as part of our Family Academy, and it's being validated. Oh, the university got a $350,000 grant to validate our Family Academy curriculum so that we can then go viral with that, and our different early childhood centers can run their own academies right there. But families are already saying, boy, and so he would take home his lessons on CD. He got what he would get in class, he would take his lessons home on CD, but now he's also going for his GED and learning, and literacy at a program at North High. And I also have to tell you another success story from Family Academy. We don't proselytize or anything. I am a woman of strong faith, but I am a 501c3. And so to the degree that we talk about marriage, we just say, hey, here's the deal. So you're having children together, and two incomes are better than one. So let's say we seal the deal, if we can work some stuff out, so that economically, in fact, the baby has a stronger foundation. And so we've had since, and I want to report, and like I said, we've had some dads come through, and we're because some of our NAS connectors are men, African American men, and so they have a more connection with the guys, and they can get them to come. But anyway, one family, when they started Family Academy, both were out of work, and the young mom was pregnant, and she had a toddler. After Family Academy, and during maturing, he got a job at McDonald's and is continuing his GED. She put her older child in an early childhood, a family and friend and neighbor care center, and they came into the office holding their marriage certificate. So we were like, all right, that's it. We can go home now. That's really what this is all about. So I'm going to go ahead and close and just want to say that, you know, Marion Wright Edelman said that so much of America's tragic and costly failure to care for all its children stems from our tendency to distinguish between our children and other people's children, as if justice were divisible. As if justice were divisible. And I submit to you that it is not. To the degree that we ensure that every baby born now graduates in 2034, and we can do that when they have a solid foundation, to the degree that we do that for every child, regardless of zip code, we will have a stronger community, we will have a stronger country, humanity will be better off. And I don't question our ability to make it happen and to get it done. I am a firm believer because it's happening everywhere. In Harlem, they have the baby college, then they have a 3-year-old journey, then they have a Harlem Gems preschool program that teaches French, Spanish, and English, and there's one other language. Maybe it's Chinese, because there's 3 different languages besides English. All low income, all children of color, all from Central Harlem. 100% of them over the last 9 years have been kindergarten ready. 100% of them. And so if they can do it in Harlem, I'm thinking that we can do a little something here in Minnesota. And you know, Ron Edmondson, I know I said that was the last quote, but I'm gonna give you one more. Ron Edmonds, a professor from Harvard University, said, and I'm gonna insert my own stuff, how many effective schools would you have to see? And I would also say, how many effective early childhood programs? How many effective 0 to 3 programs and initiatives would you have to see, because they're out there, to be persuaded of the educability of poor children? If your answer is more than one, then I submit that you have reasons of your own for preferring to believe that pupil performance or a child's development derives from family background instead of early educators or a school's response to family background. Successfully teach all children whose education is of interest to us. We already know more than we need to do that, don't we? I mean, are we wondering at all what it takes in early education? I mean, we're really not. Whether or not we do it must finally depend on how we feel about the fact that we haven't so far. How we feel about the fact that we haven't so far. So how many of you are with me right here? And again, I really want to thank you for your work and your tireless efforts, and know that I pray for all of you regularly, because I don't do early child, I'm not in the trenches like you, and so thank you.